Sandra here from Carcraft Auto Detailing in Melbourne. In today's video, I'll be looking at the various types of machine-driven pads I use for correcting and finishing paint on both rotary and dual action polishing machines. Personally, I tend to put my pads into three main categories: cutting, which is defect removal in relation to scratches, oxidation and marring; polishing, which is about removing haze and light defects and producing a clear, high-gloss finish; and one step, which are pads that have the ability to both cut and polish paint to a certain level in one stage. As you can see, we are definitely spoiled for choice when it comes to pad selection, variety and range, which is great in the way of options, but can also be daunting when you're faced with the question, what pad do I need? Which then leads to the question, what am I trying to achieve? Personally, this is going to be dictated by both my customers' needs and budget, as well as the condition of the paint itself. So why is there a market for so many different types of pads? Because all paints are different. The pads I'd use to approach a gel or hard clear coat are different from the ones I'd use for a softer clear or even a one-stage paint. There are three main materials used in pads today, which are wool, foam, and more recently, microfibre. But let's take a look at these materials and pads, as well as some of their applications and pros and cons. Wool pads have been around the longest. What's great about them is that they're easily the most durable pads. Also, generally the fastest cutting pads, as well as the coolest running ones, which means less chance of heat destroying the pad, but more importantly, less chance of burning through the paint due to excess heat. The main downside of wool would be its poor finishing ability, as it tends to leave its own fine scratches, marring and buffer trails behind, and it'll always need to be followed up with a less aggressive pad to finish the paint nicely. The other issues with wool pads are their shedding of fibres, particularly when new, and they also tend to be the most expensive pads, but not if you consider their durability. As with both foam pads and microfibre, wool pads too have many variances within themselves, from the more aggressive twisted wool pads to stranded wool and more recently hybrid pads, which contain a blend of materials such as microfibre and foam to produce a wool pad that can cut and also finish down quite well, especially on harder paints. I almost exclusively use wool pads on my rotary buffer, particularly when removing heavy defects and when working on harder paints, as it tends to be not only faster, but also a safer method for me personally. My favourite wool pads at the moment are the HD black pads. They're reasonably priced, have great durability and continue to perform exceptionally well on a variety of paints. Next up, let's have a look at the new kids on the block, microfibre pads. Unlike foam pads, which come in many different grades from heavy to light cutting pads, all the way down to finishing and jeweling, microfibre pads almost exclusively come in two ranges, cutting and finishing. What I love about these pads is their ability to correct paint almost as well as a wool or heavy cutting foam pad, but finish down so much better. I've also found them to work great on both hard and softer paints, and I now frequently use the microfibre cutting pads for one-step polishing on harder paints and the microfibre finishing pads for one-step polishing on softer paints with great success. I've however had no success using them on my rotary, as they don't seem to cut as well as wool and are quite grippy, making it harder to control the buffer, so I now only use them on my dual action machines. When looking at durability, it really depends on the brand. I found the Maguires to be a long-lasting pad, whereas the U.S.A seem to break down rapidly. Excess heat on dual-action polishes can be an issue, especially with solid pads like the Maguires that don't have a heat-dispersing center hole. This is where the U.S.A pads excel and run cooler. Due to the nature of the microfibre material and structure, it does take more product to prime the pad, and the pads do tend to clog more rapidly than wool or foam, so it's important to brush, or better still, use compressed air to clean the pads progressively during use. So taking all things into consideration, microfibre pads would overall be the most expensive pads on the market. My favourite microfibre pads are still the Maguires, though the company unfortunately stopped production of the 3-inch pads earlier this year. I've bought some of Lake Country's new microfibre pads, but have not had the chance to use them yet, though I'm hoping they'll be great. So last but not least, we have foam pads. These are the most popular pads on the market, and by far the most diverse in range. So briefly, there are 2 types of cell structures for foam pads. Closed cell, which are firmer and used mostly for more aggressive pads, and open cell, which are more common, provide better airflow, and are used for all grades of pads from cutting to finishing. There are endless types of surface finishes on these pads, from flat and waffle to diamond and spider designs. Personally, I mostly tend to use flat pads on hard to medium paints, as all the foam is making contact with the paint, resulting in faster working times. For dual action polishers, I much prefer pads with center heat dispersing holes, as this makes a huge difference in keeping the pad and paint cooler. A favourite pad design of mine are the spider pads by both Scholl and 3D, as well as the Lake Country compressor pads, which are similar in design and my go-to pads when working on softer paints. These pads flex and conform to curves like no other, meaning they are frequently making contact with the paint whilst being less aggressive on panel edges, which some pads can burn through rapidly. Another advantage of these pads is the amazing airflow design, which ensures the pad stays cool, which for softer paints is the key in finishing down flawlessly. I also love the range of Rupes pads. They are perfectly balanced, don't really overheat, and great at pretty much everything from cutting to finishing. So why aren't I buying them anymore? They have perhaps the worst durability of any decent pad on the market. I'm lucky to get more than a couple of uses out of them. Add the fact that they're also one of the most expensive pad ranges, and it can be a devastating combination for a small detailing business owner. My go-to pads at the moment are the new ShineMate pads. Don't let the cheesy name fool you. They are excellent pads, almost as well balanced as the Rupes and just as capable at half the price, with about 5 times more durability. So for me and my business, it's really a no-brainer. So just a couple of quick tips before I wrap this up. Firstly, always center your pads perfectly with the backing plate, as this will not only produce better correcting results, but it will also extend the life of both your machine and your pads. And secondly, try to avoid using a single pad to correct the whole car. Use at least 2 or 3, as this will not only produce better and faster results, but it'll also greatly extend the life of your pads. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.